In the quiet town of Auburn Ridge, Texas, neighbors thought they knew the Moss family, a mother rebuilding her life, two teens blending into one household, and a second chance at stability. But behind those closed doors, something unspoken was growing. And when one body turned up, it was ruled a tragedy. When the second one did, they called it coincidence. It wasn't until a third twist shattered everything that the truth came out, and no one in town was ready for it. Auburn Ridge wasn't the kind of place where people got lost in the crowd. Just a few stoplights, one grocery store, and a high school football team that everyone showed up for, even when they were losing. People paid attention. So when Lisa Moss remarried and moved her teenage daughter Aubrey into the home of her partner Derek Sloan and his son Braden, it didn't go unnoticed. Lisa had a history, not the kind people talked about openly, but the kind you could hear between the lines at church potlucks and pharmacy counters. Her daughter Aubrey was 17, pretty in a way that got attention, but quiet enough to seem respectful. Braden, Derek's son, was already 18, tall, kept to himself, and smart enough to be taking early college classes at the community center. The town called them the new blended family. Lisa just called it starting over. Inside that house on Millard Lane, things moved fast. Lisa was working doubles at the nursing home. Derek was hardly home, driving rigs cross-country. That left Aubrey and Braden alone, a lot. At first, it looked like typical sibling bonding. Homework at the kitchen table. Inside jokes during dinner. Sharing playlists. The kind of harmless closeness people wanted to see in a patched-up family. But what the town didn't know was that Lisa and Derek had a past that never really got closure. And the two kids born from that mess? They weren't just step-anythings. DNA would later prove what no one asked at the time. Still, back then, it looked normal. They shared a bathroom, a hallway, a Netflix password. Braden helped Aubrey with her math. She taught him how to fix his curls and pick better hoodies. They told themselves it wasn't weird, that no one had to know how close they were getting, that nobody needed to label anything. It started with long stares that lasted a little too long. Then came the late-night talks in her room. Door cracked, lights low. One morning, a neighbor saw them in the backyard. Not kissing, not touching, but standing too close, laughing like nobody else existed. And she remembered it because something about it didn't sit right. Lisa, busy and hopeful, missed the signs. Or maybe she didn't want to see them. She finally had a man willing to stay, a home with more than one income, and two teenagers who weren't causing trouble. To her, that looked like success. But under that roof, something was happening that no parenting book could have warned her about. And by the time she finally saw it for what it was already too late. Because this wasn't just a family trying to make things work. It was a secret waiting to explode. It started with a science assignment. Mrs. Langston's biology class at Auburn Ridge High had kicked off a unit on genetics. The project? Map your DNA traits using cheek swabs and basic lab tools. Harmless stuff. Eye color, tongue rolling, attached earlobes. Just a way to get kids engaged. Aubrey didn't think twice. She brought the kit home, swabbed her cheek, labeled it, and asked Braden, who'd always been down to help, to do his too. He laughed about it, said it was like being in CSI. They made jokes, filed the results, moved on. A week later, when the class reviewed their findings, something didn't add up. Aubrey's markers didn't align with Lisa's, and Braden's looked strangely close. Too close. At first, she thought the samples had been mixed up, but when she reran the test at home, just for fun, she told herself, The results came back again. Identical markers, shared recessive traits. Too many matches for coincidence. It didn't make sense. So she went deeper. Using one of those free Ancestry DNA kits she ordered online under a fake name, she waited 3 weeks for results that would blow apart everything she thought she knew. Not only were she and Braden related, they weren't step anything. They were full-blooded siblings. Same father, same mother. Somehow, in the years of breakups and custody shuffles, Lisa had managed to raise them apart without ever telling the full truth. Braden had been placed with Derek. Aubrey had stayed with Lisa, and neither parent had ever admitted what really tied them together. But now, Aubrey knew. And the worst part? She didn't stop. Neither did he. For a few days, they avoided each other. Silent meals. Closed doors. But it didn't last. Whatever line had already been crossed didn't erase itself just because of a test result. Instead of retreating, they leaned in. They told themselves it was different. That love wasn't supposed to feel this powerful unless it meant something. Late nights became early mornings. Shared touches turned into locked doors. They became sexually intimate. The danger only made it more intense. It wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about owning what they thought no one would ever understand. Aubrey deleted the Ancestry emails, burned the printed results. Braden smashed the old science kit with a hammer and buried the pieces under the porch. But secrets like that don't stay buried, especially in a town like Auburn Ridge, where people remember who dated who left who, and who had babies that nobody ever saw again. And while Lisa stayed busy chasing second chances, her daughter and son were busy building something else entirely. A connection that never should have happened. And now they knew exactly what they were, and chose to keep going anyway. Lisa had always said she didn't snoop. "If you go digging, you'll find something," she used to laugh. Like that was a reason not to. But mothers know. They know when the energy in the house shifts, when doors close too quickly, when laughter fades into silence the second they walk in, when a hug feels off. At first, she told herself it was teenage stuff, growing pains, hormones. Maybe they were just getting too comfortable. After all, they weren't blood, not as far as she knew. Then she found the notebook. She'd been cleaning Aubrey's room, half out of habit, half looking for a charger. The pink leather-bound journal was wedged behind a drawer. Not locked. Not even hidden well. That's what made her pause. The pages weren't full of poems or to-do lists. They were entries, detailed ones. Lines about Braden. About nights when the house was quiet. About how wrong it is to want him this badly. But I can't stop. Lisa froze. She read faster. Words blurred. One entry described the first time they kissed. Another hinted at something more. And then she saw the photos, tucked in the back of the journal like a cruel punchline. Aubrey and Braden in her bed, shirtless, laughing. One selfie in a mirror, her arm wrapped around him from behind. Both of them flushed, smiling like this was normal, like they weren't her kids. Lisa dropped the notebook. That night, when Braden came through the door, she was waiting in the kitchen, hands shaking. She slammed the notebook on the table, called for Aubrey, demanded answers. At first, they denied it. Then the yelling started. Lisa shouted words she didn't even know she remembered. Disgusting. Sick. Your siblings. Aubrey's eyes narrowed. Braden stood frozen, chest heaving. Lisa threatened to call the police. Said she'd take the diary to the school. Said she'd have Braden locked up and Aubrey sent away. "You think the world won't find out? I'll make sure they do." That's when things snapped. Nobody knows who pushed who first. Maybe it was instinct, maybe panic, maybe rage. But in the struggle, Lisa hit the floor hard, her temple clipping the edge of the counter. She groaned but didn't get up. Aubrey froze. Braden knelt down, shaking her. Still breathing. Still alive. That's when Aubrey noticed the pill bottle on the table, her mother's hidden stash. Old muscle relaxers, strong ones. Lisa hadn't touched them in months. No one said a word. Within minutes, they opened the capsules and poured the powder into her mouth. Braden sobbed. Aubrey told him to stop. They arranged the bottle beside her hand, wiped down what they could, turned off the lights. The next morning, Lisa was found unresponsive. Paramedics called it an overdose. No signs of forced entry, no note, but plenty of motive, stress, burnout, maybe a relapse. In Auburn Ridge, people grieved quietly. Lisa had always carried too much. Maybe it finally broke her. Only 2 people knew what really happened in that kitchen. And they'd already buried the truth once. Braden didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the bathtub most of the night, face in his hands, trying to convince himself it wasn't murder, that it was an accident, that maybe Lisa would have taken the pills on her own eventually. But no matter how many times he played it over in his mind, he couldn't shake the image of the powder on her lips. And the way Aubrey's hands didn't even tremble. She wasn't shaken. She was focused. By morning, she had already wiped their fingerprints off the pill bottle, deleted texts, burned the notebook, and gone through Lisa's email to notify the family of the tragic accident. Everything she touched had a purpose. Every word she spoke was rehearsed. "You're gonna mess this up if you start acting weird," she told him. "Stick to the story." The story was simple. Lisa had been tired. She hadn't been sleeping. The pills weren't new. She probably relapsed. They found her on the kitchen floor, tried CPR, called 911, and Braden repeated it over and over, to the cops, to the medics, to Derek when he flew in from New Mexico the next day. Aubrey never broke. She held his hand, wore sunglasses at the hospital, hugged the officers. "She was our everything," she said. "We just want peace." No autopsy was ordered. Lisa's death certificate read, "Accidental overdose." By the time the funeral came around that Friday, the entire town had bought the script. The church was filled with casseroles and whispered sympathy. Aubrey wore black with soft curls pinned up. Braden stood stiff in a suit that didn't fit right. His eyes were red for real. People said the 2 teens had been through so much already. Moving, remarriage, school changes. It was heartbreaking. A girl losing her mother. A boy losing the only woman who ever treated him like family. Nobody suspected a thing. Braden didn't say a word. That night, he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He told Aubrey he wanted to tell someone, that it didn't feel right. She looked at him calmly and said, "Do you want to go to jail for this? Do you want everyone to know what we are?" And just like that, he stayed quiet. Because Aubrey didn't just bury her mother. She buried the one person who might have stopped her. Derek Sloan had been gone less than a week when Lisa died. The timing never sat right with him. She wasn't suicidal. She'd been texting him grocery lists and talking about fixing the porch lights. Nothing in her voice had sounded off. Nothing hinted at the kind of darkness the police report implied. But grief has a way of making you doubt your instincts. For a while, he tried to believe it. Told himself maybe she'd hidden it well. That maybe she'd spiraled in silence. People did that. Especially people who'd been through what Lisa had. Broken marriages, custody drama, years of scraping by. Still, something tugged at him. Actually, he was the first to suspect something was wrong in their home. He confided in a friend who asked him to install a hidden camera since Lisa and him were hardly at home, and he did just that. He wasn't expecting to capture something this big, just an action taken to make sure everything was good at home. But when he went back to that camera after Lisa's death, his world shattered. He retrieved the flash drive connected to the camera and plugged it into his laptop that night. Then he saw it. Lisa was pacing, visibly upset, and talking to someone off camera. The audio was faint, but he caught pieces. This has to stop. It's not normal. I swear, if either of you come near each other again, then a male voice panicked. You're going to ruin us! Derek slammed the laptop shut. The next morning, he drove straight to the sheriff's office, told them he didn't want to accuse anyone, just that things weren't sitting right. He handed over the flash drive, gave a statement, then left without looking back. But the town had already started whispering. One neighbor mentioned seeing Braden and Aubrey holding hands behind the school gym. Another swore she heard moaning from a cracked bedroom window a few weeks back. Thought it was a boyfriend, but now wasn't so sure. The funeral photos made it worse. The way Aubrey leaned into Braden. The matching jewelry. The shared room Lisa had once said was temporary. Whispers turned into suspicion. Now the police had a reason to revisit Lisa's file. And two teenagers were about to learn that a clean cover-up doesn't always mean you're in the clear, especially when the past leaves receipts. They called it Exhibit A. The flash drive Derek handed over was submitted without much ceremony. Just a man trying to do right by the woman he'd lost, even if it meant implicating the two teens he once called family. Braden didn't run. When the deputies pulled up to the house on Millard Lane, he didn't ask questions. He stepped onto the porch barefoot, hands visible, mouth dry. Aubrey wasn't home, out getting her nails done, or maybe pretending to be somewhere else. He didn't know anymore. He didn't ask. The officer read him his rights. Braden barely heard them. At the station, the walls felt smaller than he expected. The lights too bright. The chair too cold. The detective didn't raise his voice. Didn't bang the table. Just slid a folder across with photos inside. Lisa on the floor, Lisa's pills, the journal fragments, a still from the video showing Braden mid-grab, face twisted in panic. We already know, the detective said. We just want to hear it from you. Braden stayed silent for 43 minutes. Then he cracked. He told them everything. The late nights, the relationship, the DNA test, the journal, the pills, the moment Lisa hit her head, how Aubrey poured the powder into her mouth and told him to shut up and fix his face before the medics arrived. She said it was the only way, he whispered. She said it wasn't really murder, if we loved each other. The detective asked, And you believed that? Braden didn't answer. Aubrey was brought in later that night. She walked in calm, lips glossed, hoodie zipped. She sat across from a different officer and crossed her legs like she had somewhere else to be. When they showed her Braden's statement, she blinked once and said flatly, He's lying. He's obsessed with me. Always has been. She called him unstable. Said he'd made advances. Said Lisa had been trying to separate them because he couldn't take no for an answer. Claimed she was the one who tried to keep things appropriate. That he snapped when Lisa threatened to send him away. She denied the journal. Denied the pills. Denied the kiss. Denied the bedroom. He's not my brother, she said, without flinching. And he's not my problem. But investigators had the video evidence. Her lies didn't count. The trial lasted 12 days. Aubrey Moss walked in every morning dressed like the victim. Her attorney called it a tragic misunderstanding. claimed Lisa had mental health struggles, and painted Braden as an emotionally unstable teen infatuated with a girl who never felt the same. But the prosecution had the tape. They had Braden's full confession, the journal fragments recovered from a school locker, and the digital bank record showing the split transfer of Lisa's savings just 2 days after she died. Still, the jury didn't move fast. Some thought Braden was just as guilty. Others saw him as a manipulated boy in over his head. A kid who'd been pulled into something unnatural, something too twisted for his own mind to process. The court finally drew the line. Braden got 10 years for obstruction and accessory to manslaughter, eligible for parole in 5. Aubrey? She was convicted of second-degree murder, conspiracy to conceal a body, and falsification of evidence. 35 years. No parole for 20. Outside the courthouse, opinions split fast. Some called her a predator. Others called her a victim of a broken family system. Braden now serves time in a juvenile facility turned low-security prison in Lubbock County. He writes, keeps to himself, doesn't speak to the press. Aubrey? She hasn't spoken a word since the sentencing. No apology, no statement. Just a blank stare in every mugshot taken since. The house on Millard Lane was sold at auction. The new owners gutted it, painted over every wall. But the neighbors say the air still feels heavy, like it remembers. Because this wasn't just about murder. It was about a lie that should have never started, and a love that was never meant to exist.